Hey guys, today we're going to be doing a Rate My Build with Dion, and we're going to be talking about his 11.5 fighting rifle. Go ahead and roll the intro. Hey guys, thanks for checking out another Hatchet Cast episode. And today I have Dion with me here at Element Training Center, and we have his, is it training complex? I knew it! I was like, it's 50-50. Hey guys, thanks for checking out another Hatchet Cast episode. And today we are going to be doing a Rate My Build with Dion here at Element Training Complex, and we're going to be talking about his 11.5 fighting rifle. So, before we get started, make sure you hit the like and the subscribe button. Also, make sure you share this video with a friend. If you're curious about where to get certain parts or things of that nature, comment on this video. Dion actually will probably peruse the comments and maybe answer some questions for you guys. If you also want to come train and take a class, it's a great way to support the channel. And I host almost all my classes here at Element. So make sure you come train with me here at Element. And also, this is a great training facility, so make sure you come and check that out. Now, before we get started, I do want to talk about a product that is from one of our channel sponsors, and that channel sponsor is Wetworks. Now, this is the Dagger 2 plate carrier. It's super simple. It does have the crossguard cummerbund on it. Every product from Wetworks is really, like, he has a very simple design in mind. One, that's how he keeps his costs low, so that way he doesn't spend a lot of time and make an overly complicated product. But it's also really comfortable. So on the inside of this plate carrier, there's actually the same material that's on like your Cry knee pad pants. So it's very soft. It does have shoulder pads on it. And the very back of it has Molly. Now, what's really fascinating is on the back of this, for a lot of other plate carriers, you'll usually see like bungee or like clips or all this craziness, that they end up doing. If you're trying to adjust the tightness on this, it's just Velcro. So it's secured in with Velcro, just like on the front. It's honestly, I don't know why most companies have not done that already. The crossguard cummerbund does have elastic pouches, so that way you can put radios, extra mags, med kits, things of that nature. And this also accepts standard placards that you get with your typical plate carriers. These buckles are adjustable, so if you want the placard higher or lower, you can adjust that. And there's adjustment in the shoulder strap, so you can make the plate bags rise or lower. Now on this, I don't have a Wetworks placard. I do have a placard from Whiskey 7. They're actually a local company here, and they make a bunch of leather patches and stuff of that nature. But there's a really cool placard that they have. It has a mat pouch that's built in that fully unzips all the way. So you can actually add in like a panel. So you can have like your ATACs or whatever in here. Really neat if you have like a dope card or dope sheet if you're shooting long gun. It's a really useful tool. Check out where it works. We're also going to be doing a lot of our merch, most likely through Whiskey 7, so go check them out as well. Also, make sure you check the description below. There's a discount code so you can save some money, and special thanks to Wetworks and Whiskey 7. So let's talk about, your fighting rifle. I see you use this like all the time. It's like your main squeeze.
I call it my workhorse.
Workhorse.
This is my baby.
Yeah.
If I was only able to keep one rifle, this one would be.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
Over like the SPR or?
1000%.
Really?
This rifle I've had for about 10 years now. It's gone through a ton of different variations. And what I've kind of settled on has been my favorite so far, and I've kind of ran it in this configuration for quite a few years now.
Have you had to like replace any parts or anything, like barrels?
Been through a couple barrels, been through a couple bolt carriers, tons of different buffers, springs, and stuff like that. Normal wear and tear parts. Like I said, I use this gun for quite a bit of everything. All the classes I take with it. I'll shoot this thing out to 500 yards comfortably. We did it this past weekend at the tactical games on marathon targets. Yeah, this is my baby.
Nice. Well, so what we'll do is we'll do a breakdown of the rifle. We'll start from the very front and work our way back, which is kind of like the standard for these videos. So let's talk about the muzzle device and the suppressor you're running.
Yeah. So running Otter Creek Labs Polonium. It's direct threaded to the muzzle. as I've gotten kind of deeper into the firearms game and stuff like that, I've kind of, me personally, I've pushed away from like muzzle devices, and rifles are just getting their own dedicated suppressor now. That's kind of where I'm at. In my opinion, it saves weight because you don't have to do a hub, you don't have a muzzle device. I just throw it on there. I don't have to worry about any POI shift because it lives on the gun. So yeah, Otter Creek Polonium direct threaded onto a 11.5 Noveske barrel. Got a BCM MCMR handguard.
Yeah, I think I've got one of those. I actually, so I had one a long time ago, and I actually broke this thing, and since then, instead of asking for a replacement, I just stopped running.
Stop running it.
Yeah, but
so
that's my laziness.
I have this handguard on quite a few different guns. I like how thin they are.
Yeah.
I don't like big bulky handguards personally. I don't have the biggest hands either, so I like to be able to wrap my hands around it. But on some of my rifles, I don't know what it is. Like this thing has gotten loose and it kind of jiggles around.
Yeah.
But on this one, it stayed where it's supposed to be. It's just a different fitment between certain uppers.
Okay, yeah, most likely. I think mine, I think the thing got loose and I didn't pay attention. And then one time when we were putting on a new barrel, I think I over tightened it and it snapped one of the eyelets off on this separate metal piece here.
Yeah,
and so
locking tab.
I was just like, let's just pretend that didn't happen. Yeah. But so as far as your can, how long have you had that?
I think I've had that one for about a year now. Before that, I ran a rugged micro 30 on there with a 5.56 end cap. I've been a lot happier with this can. It's way quieter. I will shoot this thing without ears all the time. It could be because it's so quiet. It could be just because I'm getting deafer, like working out at the range.
Maybe both. Maybe both.
Yeah, maybe a little bit of both. But to me and everybody else, it seems to be super duper quiet. The weight is not bad. Like I said, it's direct threaded, so I'm losing the weight of a muzzle device and a hub, and performs pretty well at night. The flash on it is not very big. I think it's just like a little flame. We did a little test a couple weeks ago. I've overall, like for a $500 suppressor, I have been extremely pleased.
That's $500?
Yep, $500.
Dang.
Yep.
All right. That's and Otter Creek's, obviously they make really good cans. So if you haven't, what's the name of their meme page? They have a meme page where they just like
Otter Dumps.
Otter Dumps.
Otter Dumps. Good times.
Yeah. So they're pretty open about everything and also talk about different products from. So go check out Otter Creek and Otter Dumps. But they have a lot of good information they're pushing out about other suppressors, their own suppressors, torture testing. So if you're curious about information on different cans, that's a great page to check out on Instagram. And so you ended up just direct threading that, and that's just because you're like, I'm never taking this off.
Yep.
I'm never gonna. Okay. Yep. Yeah. Now let's talk about the barrel. What barrel are you running, and what's your gas system?
It's a Noveske 11.5 Commando barrel, if I'm not mistaken, and it should be a mid-length gas system.
Is it a H bar or like a heavy profile?
It is a heavy profile barrel. It is a heavy profile.
So what were the previous barrels that you used to run on this before?
Ballistic Advantage barrels.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Okay.
I used to love Ballistic Advantage barrels. I don't know what happened to them. They used to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, as you get more and more into the firearms game, your taste gets a little bit better and better. And sometimes you make a little bit more money and you can afford a little bit of the nicer stuff. And so for this one, once I shot out the Ballistic Advantage barrel, I just went ahead and threw a Noveske in there.
I remember, so I used to run Ballistic Advantage quite a bit as well. And this is one of those things where I have, in my opinion, at a certain point in time, they were making the best budget barrels that you could possibly buy. Like, it was like such a good deal, really great value. And then after 2020, there was like a massive amount of people that were just buying guns, and a lot of stuff was, so the QC kind of went down a little bit, at least from what we experienced on the user end. And a bunch of guys that we shot with also had issues, right? So like that happened for such a long enough period of time where it was really hard to get the confidence back in that. And it goes back to one of those things like, loved, that company's barrels, loved everything that they had. And I think it's so important for the end user where you don't just become brand loyal. Like, there are companies that I love today that make really good products, and then down the road, who knows, QC may end up falling apart, or they don't correct something, and so you have to make sure that you're QCing everything. there's a lot of companies I love, but you still got to QC your stuff. So if you're using it, if you're a shooter like Dion, you know, you'll start to see like, all right, this isn't right. This isn't a characteristic that I should.
Just because they were good once doesn't mean
Yes.
they're going to continue to always be good.
Correct.
Some companies' quality gets better, sometimes it gets worse.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
And hopefully, you know, and I will say this also, every company's going to make mistakes. Just like I'll even make mistakes on my channel. Dion probably, I'm sure, makes mistakes in his life. But like the key is about correcting those mistakes, listening to feedback, and then pushing through it.
Yep.
And so there's actually a company that we're hopefully going to be doing a video, actually you and I will be doing a video together on it, that is doing that course correction now and has been working on that. And I'm really rooting for him. So we'll talk about that later. But you gotta QC your own stuff, and the only way you QC it is by going out and shooting and taking classes and training on your own. So, all right, so kind of let's talk real quick about this rail. It does have M-LOK all the way around. Have you always been a BCM connoisseur, or is it just something like you just like the rails?
I just like the rails. I like how thin they are.
Yeah.
And once I got one a long time ago, it's always worked for me, and so I just never kind of deviated from it. I've used other handguards like SLR and stuff like that, and theirs are fantastic as well. But because I've never had an issue out of a BCM handguard, and I like the way they feel, that's the one that I continue to go with, and they're not very expensive either.
Now, as far as the grip texture, what is this?
These are rail scales that I have on here on both sides. Just add a little bit of texture, a little bit more grip to it. I used to run like vertical grips and stuff like that on the bottom. I don't do that anymore. I run all of my guns slick.
Why?
Across the bottom. So when it comes to shooting off barricades, sometimes barricades are wider, sometimes they're shorter. And when you plop a vertical grip or any type of angled grip into the middle, it can tend to give you issues with getting a good stable shooting position. And the other thing for me was when it came to grabbing the rifle and pulling it into me, having the leverage down here was weird. Being able to grab this like I would a rope or a pole, and to be able to pull it towards me without having my grip sacrificed worked a lot better.
Right.
I even used the BCM CAG grip for a while until I started shooting off of barricades and stuff like that. I just kept running into too many issues.
Yeah.
And then just running a slick rail at the bottom works best for me.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the key. Is it's like figuring out all the equipment and setup that works best for you. You know, I run vertical grips, I run short nubs. I don't run any hand stops per se, but that is something that works for me. It fulfills the criteria that I need. But if you have some sort of stuff on your rifle, and I see this in class quite a bit, and we'll actually take the equipment and like pull out tools and move stuff around, because sometimes people have a hand stop and it feels good when they're just like holding the gun in their house in their underwear and just like playing around with it. But then when they go shoot, what they naturally put their hand, it doesn't line up. So they're like, there's a hand stop there that literally is just doing nothing.
Yep.
So if, you know, whenever you take classes, you figure that type of stuff out. But every shooter's different. And so, you know, I used to run slick for a while, and then I started getting back into the vertical grips.
Yeah.
But who knows? Maybe in 2 years I'll be back to slick again.
Yeah.
So on your rail, you're running multiple different accessories. Can you kind of break down some of those?
All right, going kind of front to back, we have a full power pec on there. Before, I ran a civilian power like D-ball A3.
So first off, you went from D-ball A3 to PEC. Why the switch?
Power capability.
Okay.
Shooting out further distance, having a stronger IR illuminator, having a stronger IR laser, I just needed it for the stuff that we were doing. For most people, probably not. But what really opened my eyes was going out onto our 600-yard range and people turning on their IR lasers and being able to actually use them out to 300 yards, 400 yards, and then I would turn on mine and it was just yeah. The illuminator was like the big thing for me. I don't really care if I can see the whole laser beam when I turn my IR laser on, but the illuminator was huge for me, having a more powerful illuminator. And then the D-balls they're tested and they work well as well, but the PEC 15 it's tested and true.
Yeah.
Like, they can take quite a bit of abuse and keep on pushing. I've never had any issues out of mine. I know some people have had like ears break off on the bottom, but if you know the right people, you can get them repaired. But yeah, the pec is what I run full power pecs on all my guns.
So I ended up having, a lot of on lasers. What I love about the controls on the PEC is I can actuate it with my thumb without breaking my hand grip.
Yep.
So like that's the one thing about the PEC. It's really nice is that you can turn it off, you can turn it to IR, you can do a loom. With a lot of other lasers, they have dials on the back or on the sides, and you have to physically like break your hand and twist it like this to be able to turn it to different selectors. So I like the fact that I don't know. The PEC is just an awesome laser unit.
Yeah.
It's been tried true. It's amazing.
It's like the Honda Civic.
It is, man. It's
Like
just
it's
been
not like the fanciest laser.
Yeah.
It's not the worst laser. Like it just gets the job done.
Yeah.
It will take you to get your groceries and get you home every single time.
with EBT.
Yes.
So you're running the laser. What are some of the switches you're running?
So I'm running mod light buttons.
Yeah.
The back one is just a standard mod light button. The front one is a ramp button. The front one activates my laser because it allows me to keep my grip the best, and then the back one is white light. It's not as like intuitive to come back to the white light, but I did that on purpose because then I don't have to worry about NDing it. In order for me to come back and hit this switch, I have to ever so slightly break my grip and pull my thumb back.
It's a conscious thought.
Yeah,
Right.
I actually had them the other way at first, and then
Yeah.
I would get white light NDs. Just because when I would naturally grab the gun, my hand kind of comes across, it would hit, and then I just kind of taking classes
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Made me realize like, hey, it's gonna work better for me to switch these around.
Yeah.
I won't ND my white light. You can get the 100 Concepts flip cap on there. Eric just hasn't given me one yet.
I'll get you what I
No,
got.
but I just haven't got one yet.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is like don't even rely on that to stop a white light ND. You need to have good fundamentals. You need to understand how your weapon is set up to stop NDs of both white light or the trigger.
So this for the ramp that looks like HRF or
Yep, it's an HRF concept.
so it's a separate mod that you
Yeah.
can buy with the Unity switches. The Unity switches are nice because it's a deliberate push. Like it's not something where you can kind of like sort of hit it on the side. Like you have to deliberately stick your finger in there and push that button down, which makes it a conscious effort so you don't ND as bad. Have you had any issues? All right, so let me ask this question a different way. How many Unity pressure switches have you gone through?
0.
Really?
Yeah, I've been lucky.
Dude, I've gone through like 3 of them.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the people that's gone through quite a few. I don't know. People that know me, they'll tell you I beat the crap out of this rifle. I have not had any issues out of those.
It's true. He does beat the crap out of it.
I have not had any issues out of those. On my Rattler, I'm running their new Unity Axon switch.
Yeah.
Which I absolutely love. And I'll probably eventually put one on here.
Yeah.
Maybe if or whenever these buttons break, but if it's not broke, don't
fix it.
So
Yeah.
that's what they have for now.
Yeah, I've had issues with them shorting out, and so the wire will end up getting loose or some sort of connection issue, so it won't power on. Have you noticed, or I don't know if have you tried putting a direct button push on your flashlight and noticed any difference in how bright the light is from running the switch versus running a direct cap?
I have not.
Okay, so it's something that people have talked about. I've seen it on Surefire switches. I've never run a Unity light switch before, but it's something that's out there on the nether that people are talking about. So if that's a big concern for you, maybe look at that. I run direct button push, but to be honest, if I had a Unity light cap, I'd probably run it. The key is these switches, just like everything else, it's a replaceable item. Like it's going to wear out eventually. Like you'll wear the button rubber out. Things will eventually short out, except the PEC that'll last you forever. And also lights will run out. I've gone through multiple of those lights. So speaking of the light, what light are you running? And
It's a mod light, OKW, if
Okay.
I'm not mistaken, is the light head I have on there right now. I have like a PLH2 light head as well,
Yeah.
but I'm pretty sure the one that's on there is the OKW.
and is that the mod light body as well?
It is.
So this is what end cap is this?
It is a Surefire EU
Okay.
end cap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is it any reason for running that over the mod light one, or I think they issue them out with the mod light. I don't know.
I think I just had like that laying around, and
Nice.
it just ended up on the gun.
Good.
Everybody at home tends to have like a parts bin of random stuff.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, I need an end cap. Oh, well, there's one.
Yeah.
It works.
Yeah. Dude,
I've looked at putting the Surefire, like was it the DS00 tail cap on there, but like I shoot right-handed. I'm a lefty, but I shoot right-handed, and I wasn't able to find like a good way to be able to like actuate it.
Yeah.
And so having a push button over there was kind of a mute point.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And also, it looks like it's really close to the body of the rail, so you can't. I don't know if you'd even be able to really fit it without like rubbing against the rail itself. But that light bar, how are you attaching that?
If I'm not mistaken, that is the Arasaka light bar. I think it's designed to actually push the light out a little bit further, but I kind of have it tucked in a little bit. But
Why?
yeah, it's the Arasaka one. I don't think I was as concerned about light shadow. I've seen people bend these light bars when they have them out too far. And like I said, I used the crap out of this gun, and I wanted it to just be stable. And so that little bit of scope or suppressor shadow that I got was not a big deal to me.
Yeah, I have broken those light bars, those specifically, and then also other companies' light bars. And so actually I broke Cloud's light bars, multiples of them. And the problem is putting it out there to eliminate scope shadow, it is extremely vulnerable out there. So I've literally had it snap off in class. I think it was on a VTAC. Snapped off, and it just like was dangling. I'm like, all right, well, that sucks. So the other issue is when you're running through ports, and when that light's really far forward, you only get a little bit of suppressor that's able to make it through those small ports. So like, it's just something to consider. You know, what's the pro versus the con? It's like, all right, well, I have it all the way out here for light shadow or scope shadow, excuse me, suppressor shadow. You know, is that worth leaving the bar a little bit weaker, not against the rail as much, having less room to work with whenever I'm working ports and on different barricades? So you got to weigh the pros and cons. It's not for me or Dion to tell you like this is exactly what you should do. You got to figure that out. This is what works for him. I also agree because it's something that I've experienced and it's worked for me as well. So now, are you just running a simple QD on this?
Yeah, this is a BCM, their little QD socket to attach my sling.
Do you like having it to the rear, or have you ever had them forward? Or
I do not like having them all the way up at the front.
Okay.
In my experience, when you have the sling all the way up at the front and then you have the gun slung and you're trying to run around, it keeps the gun closer to your body, but the downside of that is when you're running, now you're like hitting the gun against your knees. When I've had it back here and then I go to tighten it down against my body, what it does is it kind of kicks the muzzle out a little bit.
Okay, nice.
And then it just allows me to run a little bit more free. I don't have to worry about my knees banging up against stuff. It's less sling that I have to deal with.
Right.
To me, it's just, I've always preferred to run them back there.
Yeah, nice. I will say there's a lot of companies out there, and if you're a company that's watching this video, one, thank you, but two, if you're not going to build in QDs, make sure you just send a rail with a QD separate.
Yeah.
Like just include it with the rail. Like it's 2025 now, you know? Yeah. So just do it. So kind of working back from that, let's work on your upper receiver and lower receiver and what you got there. Actually, let's talk about that.
Yeah. So working our way back a little bit more, I am running a Trijicon Skeet IRX and their Wilcox flip to side mount on top of a Unity, their new accessory rail mount or riser. And so I've been kind of toying with this the last month or so. I had been running this clip on my SPR for a lot of like hog hunting, coyote hunting, doing tags. But because I use this rifle way more often, I wanted to try to see if I could bring this thermal capability over to this one.
Yeah.
And you know, me and Eric went out on the 300-yard range the other day and was able to slap this on, not change my zero at all, and engage targets out to 300 yards, which was pretty cool. And so I've been kind of messing with it. What inspired me to put this on here was actually seeing a rifle at SHOT Show that Unity had on the wall. And they had a thermal on a shorty, and I was like, I want to try that out.
Interesting.
That's pretty sick. I think you've probably seen it like in Call of Duty too. But the whole like running and gunning with it, I don't think is going to work out very well. But being able to kind of sit back and engage targets, or at least scan with it on the rifle, is where it's going to shine. Getting in between the reticle and the thermal, so I'll like cut my hand over the top during the day to clear it up, but at night absolutely no problem.
Yeah.
The only other downside I've noticed too is I have to like unscrew this diopter all the way out, but I don't have a lot of time with the thermal on the 11.5. I have more time with it on the SPR.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking I could probably return this back to where it is and then probably mess with the diopter back here.
Right.
That way I don't have to mess with this, I flip to the side, use it, throw it back over. I'm not having to like screw this out to use the magnet.
Now, what is a cheaper version of this with other companies that you've used in the past that you like?
The IRA RH25 got a lot of time behind that. With those, and it's a really great affordable option for most people. This is not a lot of people need something that expensive, but you know, if you come across a deal, why not? But yeah, the RH25, I think they just came out with their model, which is supposed to be even better and more user friendly than their version 1. Don't have any time on that one yet, but one of my buddies has one, and he says it's worth getting that brick. That target's
Has a hit.
It's literally like that target's so tiny. These are like 4 pixels. Like, but you put the dot right on it and it hits.
Yeah. Sick. Now this is definitely a capability that you got to save for. Like. Yeah. And so, like, what's the equivalent to the Trijicon? Because I know the Skeet IR is pretty pricey. So what's the equivalent that's a lower price point?
The IRA RH25 is going to be like its equivalent. I think their V2 sits at about $5,000. You can find used RH25 from like $300 to $4,500, depending on how like beat up it is.
Okay.
But that's actually what I used quite a bit before I went over to the Trijicon. And the RH25 is what I recommend to most people if they're looking for a clip-on IR or thermal. Sorry.
Yeah, and IRs or thermals are one of those things where like you can go really expensive. You can go kind of if you're trying to dip your toes into it. There's a lot of other options that are pretty economically priced as well. Now the Wilcox mount, so there's multiple features that you have on that. Can you kind of talk about all the different features that thing has?
So the main one is going to be the flip to side function. So there's a button back here that you can click in, and then it's kind of stiff, but it flips over to the side. One of my buddies actually has his button pinned. That way it doesn't lock because of how stiff this actually is. So you can flip it to the side, get it out of the way when you don't want to use it. If you don't want to do that, you can actually click this button on here and slide it off. That way you can use it as a handheld. There's a dovetail on the back, so they actually make a mount for you to put it on your helmet. And so it's very versatile. It can go on a lot of different places. It has white hot, black hot, and edge detect on there. You can take pictures with it.
It can digitally zoom, right?
Yep. It has half, 1 time, and 2 times digital zoom, and it works pretty well.
It was honestly really easy to see target. We were shooting up to 330, and you could see it plain as day. Now, as far as that Unity accessory, that's something they did release at SHOT Show this year, so it is a newer one. There is another company called Overbore Systems that has one as well. That's an equivalent that I think is probably similar or a little bit lower. So if they're out of stock or whatever, you have multiple options to choose from. So just kind of shop around. So all right, working back from there.
Working back from that, I got an EOTech EXPS3-0. And their EOTech G45 magnifier. Both of those are sitting on Unity mounts, just because we do a lot of night vision shooting and stuff like that. And bringing that optic up makes things a little bit easier.
What's the magnification level for the G45?
This one is a 5-time magnification. I was kind of torn between their new G43 and the 45, the 43 being a 3 times, the 45 being a 5 times. And I kind of figured, like, if I'm going to throw a magnifier on here, I might as well get that extra 2-time magnification. And then it kind of puts you close to like an LPVO, like a 1:6.
Yeah.
And like I said, I shot out yesterday out to almost 600 yards on moving target systems using this, and I had no problems.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things where, like, and we'll also talk about it in the distance carbine class that's coming up here, but it's a lot of people have in their mind that haven't shot out to distances like that if I'm shooting past 200-300 yards, I need to have an LPVO or a scope or something of that nature.
Yep.
Yeah, so
Nice.
it's the same thing. Just keep your feet flat. Right?
It's me.
The ground, the insoles of your feet.
Nice. What's your hold?
Literally just right on, putting the dot right on top of the head.
Okay.
It's a little
I don't know why that
reduced
small
A-zone
one always
plate.
gives me trouble.
330. 330.
Yep.
you are extremely capable. This is 11.5, and he's able to hit targets up to 500-600 yards with this. Very capable. It goes back to just training, knowing your holds, knowing what your zero distance is, what your data is going to be, and you can also just get very familiar with like, hey, about 480 or about 500, this is about what I'm going to hold for this. And then as you are able to see splash, use your magnifier to see splash and then make corrections, right? So you have a lot of capability with a system like this. Yeah, a 5x magnifier is pretty nice. It's almost the same size. I think it's the same size as their old 3x.
Yeah.
So, all right. So working down from that, what do you got?
So running a Colt bolt carrier group. I used to run like the land tack ones and all of that, and then as I began to shoot more and more, I kind of realized that like all this fancy stuff might not always be the best.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Just like as you start adding these different coatings, and then you have all these different companies that are getting into the industry, like not everybody's doing it right. I know a Colt bolt carrier is going to be reliable. It's what our military uses, what a lot of our law enforcement uses. They have probably made millions of bolt carriers, and they just run.
Yeah.
It's nothing, like I said, it's almost like the Honda Civic of bolt carriers. It's nothing fancy.
Yeah.
I just know that it's tested. I know that they're true and that they're going to work well. So if I'm not running a Colt bolt carrier, I'm running the Sons of Liberty bolt carriers. I've had good luck with their stuff as well, but for $200, I think is what I was paying for the Colt bolt carriers. It's kind of what I just landed on.
Dude, you remember Salient Arms? Like, oh, dude. So Salient Arms, like I would say, like 6, maybe 8 years ago, was like a big deal. They had a rifle in the 13 Hours movie, and like they were like the ones that did like the chrome barrels and the gold barrels.
Did they have like the weird
the little
handguards?
Like yes.
Okay, yeah,
yes.
I remember them.
All right, so I ran one of their bolts. I paid $500 for that bolt carrier group, and it was like super fancy, and the gas tube was built in, so it was like a part. It wasn't two separate parts from the carrier itself, and it broke after about 700 rounds. Like completely just catastrophic failure. So it could have been just a fluke, but it goes back to like buying really expensive stuff doesn't always mean it's going to be a better system, right? So like, don't follow the hype. Follow what works. Talk to local shooters at your community or at your club or in class. When you take class, be like, hey, what's that? It seems like it's really soft. Can I shoot it? And then you start to figure this stuff out. It's like, we didn't invent this.
Yeah.
This is just stuff.
I wasn't looking for like a low mass or a bolt carrier that's going to direct the gases away from my face. I didn't care about that. I wanted a bolt carrier that was going to be reliable, that was going to be durable. And so that's what I wanted.
Yeah. What's his name? From 9-Hole Reviews.
Henry
from 9-Hole Reviews. Thank you. He always talks about reliability is the one thing you can control, and you can improve fundamentals. You can improve performance. You can get more accurate by training, but you can't change reliability. If it's unreliable, there's nothing you can do about that. So that should be something that you really got to consider a lot is, that's the one variable that you have no power to change. So make sure that your stuff is reliable. So what charging handle are you running?
I'm kind of proud of this one.
Why?
So, like I said, I've had this rifle for quite some time.
Yeah.
And so the one thing that has stayed on this, you can't even see it because I keep my rifle so clean. This is not a Radian charging handle. I guess it is. It's an Axis charging handle. Axis is what they used to be. Before they turned over into Radian. So this charging handle is probably about 10 years old. I have mortared this gun with it. This charging handle has probably 70,000, 80,000
That's
rounds,
awesome.
that it's seen, and it has never broke. It's never given me any issues, and I will keep this on this gun until it decides to break one day.
Dude, I have a Geisley gas buster that's very similar. It's just lived for a long time.
Everybody sees and they're like, "Oh, you have a Radian." I'm like, "This is an Axis charging handle."
You watch yourself, sir. So as far as the upper receiver is just a standard upper receiver from who?
Everything on here is super Gucci except for the upper and the lower. It's an Aero Precision upper and it's an Aero Precision lower receiver that I have had since I first got the gun.
Yeah.
Since I first built it. I've never had any issues out of it. It's not anything fancy. It doesn't have like Ambi like bolt release or anything like that. But it holds the parts. It works well. It hasn't given me any issues. I think I'm running an LMT safety on here.
Yeah.
Just because I have an LMT lower on my SPR and I ended up putting a different safety on there, and I was like, oh, I had a mil-spec safety on here. It wasn't even Ambi, so I
Right.
just threw that in there. Running a Geisley super dynamic combat trigger. I used to run a super dynamic 3-gun
Okay.
from them. But as I started doing a little bit more serious shooting, it was just a little too light for
Yeah.
what made me feel comfortable.
Yeah.
I wanted something that was going to be a little bit heavier trigger pull, so the super dynamic combat is what I went with. Buffer system is a Geisley Super 42 buffer
Okay.
system. It's an H3, which everybody's like, oh dang, like that's kind of heavy. But because this gun is kind of gassy, I needed the heaviest buffer I could throw in here to kind of slow everything down, and it's worked well for me.
Nice. On the mag release, it looks like you have like a oversized.
Yeah, it's a mag pull, like oversized mag release. This allows it to my finger to rest on it and hit it a little bit easier. I think they're like $15.
Really?
And I run them on a lot of my guns. I like them.
That's a really cheap upgrade. Yeah, you were talking about the upper and lower receiver. So a couple of things. The upper and lower receiver, as long as it's in spec, should be the cheapest parts of your gun in terms of like how much like attention you put into it. As long as it's within spec, you know, like I've got some like Spikes Tactical. I think I have a couple of Anderson Arms lowers. Like, who cares?
I have quite a few guns built on like Andersons and Palmettos.
Yeah.
And, like, as long as everything is in spec, they run just like any other gun does. It's just not as cool when you pull it out at the range.
It's a bucket. It's literally a bucket that holds all your parts together. And so kind of if you end up saving money, now if you have the money and you want to buy a really expensive upper and lower receiver, sure, fine, you know, knock yourself out. But if you're on a budget and you're trying to figure out like, how do I allocate funds, spend more money on other parts that matter, like the bolt carrier group and the barrel and the buffer system, like, and you know, I would say those things even over the trigger at first, and then eventually upgrade the trigger. Now for the lightweight trigger, to Dion's point, I've also, you know, as I've grown as a shooter, it used to be always like, what's the lightest trigger you can get? And I feel like that's like when you get into shooting, it's always like, oh man, I want the super light trigger. Problem is especially in class, and I've seen this, is guys will have such a light trigger that the gun will recoil and it will actually bump fire. So they'll shoot a drill and it's like, brrr, and it's like, what was that? And they were essentially, one, you know, working on fundamentals, but two, also their trigger's so light that it would actually recoil and hit their finger because their finger's still floating near the trigger, and it would actually bump fire the gun. And so, you know, I used to run a lot of, speaking on triggers, I used to run a lot of drop-in triggers as well. Yeah. Did you ever run drop-ins, or you always run like standard?
I've always ran Geisley triggers.
Okay, so with drop-in triggers, and this is something else to consider, is it's a bucket. So like, because it's just drop-in, it has like this bucket that all the trigger components are in. It's super easy to put in. I ran all different types of the big name brand drop-in triggers. I ran flat faces, I ran curved ones. And what eventually happens, if you shoot quite a bit, is all the dirt and debris and carbon drops into that bucket.
And just
and
fills it up.
It'll fill it up. And then what happens is whenever you squeeze, you'll shoot and it won't reset. So you have to actually push the trigger forward to reset it. So you get a lot of grime in those parts, whereas with a standard, typical, regular enhanced trigger that's not inside of a bucket that you have to put in separate, you know, all the pieces separate, it doesn't do that because there's enough space for all that crap to fall around in it. And essentially, you know, when you're shooting, it knocks itself apart. But when you have a drop-in trigger, it's a bucket, so none of that stuff has anywhere to go but to go into the trigger mechanism. So just be considerate of that. And if you're a left-handed shooter, you can also take any lower receiver and make it Ambi. There's enough Ambi parts out there. Ambi safeties. There's Ambi mag releases now. Bad levers. Do you ever ran bad levers, or you just like?
I ran a bad lever for a really long time. And people like absolutely hated on them, and I think it just came down to training. Is really what it was. Is people that weren't proficient in firearms handling were throwing those on there and just trying to move faster than their skill level allowed them to, and so people were having NDs and stuff like that. But I ran one for a while, absolutely loved it, and then. The issue I had with it was sending my bolt. I was it was like bumping my bolt forward when I had it locked to the rear, because it would kick that little lever like out, if I wasn't mistaken. And so when I would like have my gun hanging, it would just send my bolt carrier forward.
Okay.
And so I ended up taking it out.
Yeah.
And I just changed the way I reloaded. I used to just grab the magazine like an absolute beer can and stick it in there and rely on my trigger finger to send the bolt home.
Yeah.
And all I did was just change the way I grip my gun. That way when I insert my magazine,
Yeah.
I just click the bolt, and my reloads didn't get any slower.
Right. No, it's just training and
Yeah.
yeah, those are the small things that help you to refine the gun and the equipment you have on it for you specifically. You know, like that's a perfect example of like a minute thing that
I use it as a band-aid for training.
Yeah.
I didn't train enough to be proficient with reloads the way the rifle was designed. And so I threw something aftermarket. And for some people, like, if that's what you want to do, by all means do it. Train with it, make sure you're proficient with it, and keep pushing.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be able to pick up any rifle and be able to do proper reloads and not, rely on that mechanism.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say I have handicapped myself by running Ambi safeties for a long time. And so when I pick up a gun with just a regular safety, I'm like, this is terrible.
What gets people with this gun all the time is the full 90-degree throw safety.
Oh, dude, I love the 90.
Everybody looks at me and they're like,
Why is it?
Why don't you have a 45? And
Yeah.
I'm like, because I just don't.
Yeah.
I have radians on some of my other guns and whatnot. And my thing is I just push pressure all the way through. I'm not pushing pressure to a spot.
Right.
I'm pushing pressure to that safety stops.
Right.
And yeah.
Yeah. Now you're running BCM grip. How long have you had that grip?
A long time. A long time.
Yeah, dude. So what do you keep anything in the compartment?
I don't think so, actually.
Okay.
I don't think there is anything in there.
So on these compartment grips.
Oh, I lied.
Oh, what do you got in there?
It's a tax stamp.
Oh, nice. See, so that's a perfect thing to have in there. So like you have your tax stamp in there. For those grips, what I'll usually
I also
do.
have the little rubber
Oh, for
stopper
that.
for the pick. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's legit. I usually will keep either a small bottle of lube and like a little cleaning thing, or I will actually take a like a paper towel and I'll wrap it up inside in a plastic bag. And so then now I have a paper towel to be able to wipe off any stuff, like if it's super dirty.
Yeah.
But then I have a spare bolt because I've had enough bolts break in class or break during a training event, and you're down a gun. So like having a spare bolt in your grip, it's, $45, you got a spare bolt, and it'll help save your training day. So now as far as your buffer, can you talk about why you have such a heavy buffer, and like when it comes to overgas guns, what does that do? How does it fix it? Things of that nature.
So the reason why I have such a heavy buffer is I was having ejection issues because of the back pressure. I don't have a flow through can, so the back pressure, especially on shorties, there's a lot of unburnt gases, and they tend to be a little bit gassier just in the nature of them. Throw a suppressor on it, it gets even worse. And so in order to make sure the gun was going to be reliable, make sure that it was ejecting correctly, I just had to go to a heavier buffer system.
Okay. Kind of slow that bolt down. So yeah, whenever you're running an overgas system, for those who aren't aware, especially if I'm running a normally gas system and I throw a suppressor on, it increases back pressure. All that pressure is going to increase the bolt speed. When that bolt slams into your shoulder, it's going to be more mass, which is going to cause the gun to recoil more. So having a rifle that's tuned really well is something that, either really good builders will do for you. So like here locally, we have Florida War Tribe is a builder. Aegis Weapon Systems, they're builders out of California, a couple of Asian dudes, really cool. But those guys will tune those guns. But if you're buying a gun from the factory or you have a barrel, what companies will do is they'll open that gas port up because it will help make sure that the gun will be reliable. And we talked about the importance of reliability. So if it's undergassed, it won't cycle. It's not enough gas to cycle the bolt. So making sure that your gun is reliable, but you can fix some of that bolt speed by adding that heavier buffer.
And it helps slow down the wear and tear on the rifle as well. Making sure that if you can't gas it properly, you have to fix that issue somewhere else. I'm not a big fan of adjustable gas blocks.
Why
I know
not?
some people are. I've just seen too many of them fail. I've seen the screws come out. I've seen them get gummed up. I've always just kind of fixed the issue with the buffer system. That's the way I've always done it.
Yeah, I've also seen the same thing. I've seen too many of them fail, and then also when guys don't maintain them, they get carbon locked up and they're stuck at whatever setting you had.
And then the guy who like tuned it to run this super like soft ammo, and then or this this high pressure ammo, and then he gets another lot of ammo that's isn't putting out the same case pressures or whatever, and then now their gun won't run. And so I've seen it time and time again. I'm just not a huge fan of adjustable gas blocks.
So funny story, when I was in class one time, there's a guy that had an adjustable gas block, and it was like a very nice rifle. And during one of the drills, I remember seeing a little thing shoot up. He was shooting, bang, 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 and I'm like, pew, and I saw like this. It looked like a BB. Shoot out the front, and
plunger.
it was his plunger and his gas block. His gun was completely dead.
I've seen that happen on multiple different rifles. Multiple different rifles.
It's just if you have them, as far as heavy duty usage, I've not seen good runs with adjustable.
I've seen
gas
people
blocks.
put them on like their precision rifles and stuff like that. But then I've seen data out there where it messes with your standard deviations and stuff like that. It's another variable that you're adding in there. I just use the gas block that came with this gun, which was like a pinned one, or I just use a standard set gas block, and like I said, I'll tune its ejection and everything with the buffer.
Nice. Well, so what are some final words of advice you would have for the listeners about your build or builds if they're building something?
If you're, my big things is pay attention to what bolt carrier you're going to use, pay attention to what barrel you're going to use. Some of the other stuff can kind of twinkle in there. Triggers, I don't feel like are as important. Like you can throw a mil-spec trigger in there and still go out there and get some training in. You don't have to go out and buy a LMT lower or a Noveski lower. Like you can build a perfectly fine rifle off of an arrow lower. It's going to make people mad, but you can build a perfectly fine rifle off of a Palmetto lower. Just make sure you're using a quality barrel. That way you're not having accuracy issues. Make sure you're using a quality bolt carrier, and everything else can kind of feather itself in there. But those are the two main things that I've always paid the most attention to. Bolt carrier, barrel, and then the buffer system too.
Buffer system.
Those are kind of like the heart of the rifle. Everything else, I could throw the crappiest mil-spec trigger in here, the gun's still going to run. I can take this charging handle out and put a mil-spec charging handle in here, the gun's still going to run. But if I pull this buffer out and put a crappy buffer system in there, the gun's not going to run anymore. If I put a crappy bolt carrier in there, the gun's not going to run anymore. So that's I tell everybody, pay attention to what barrel you're using, pay attention to what bolt carrier you're using, pay attention to your buffer system, and then go from there.
So if I was a shooter, I get my rifle and I want to come train somewhere, can you talk about Element and what you guys offer?
So we're a 205 acre training complex. We have a 100 yard range, 300, 600, 1,000 yard range. We have over 20 dynamic shoot and move bays, 50 acres of sporting clays, paintball, airsoft, a non-lethal shoot house. We kind of cater to everybody, not a specific set of shooters. If you enjoy the Second Amendment, we're here for you. We're open 7 days a week, so that no matter which day you have off, you can come out here and train.
Nice.
As long as it's not thundering out here, we're out here training. You can probably hear it right now. It's pouring rain, and I got people in bays outside right now doing their thing. But yeah,
awesome.
Great facility out here in Holt. We love having Eric out here, and yeah, we're just trying to grow the Second Amendment, trying to take care of the community.
Well, if you are local, and I'm used up here quite a bit, so if you are local, hit me up on social medias or whatever, or hit up Dion and come say hi. But guys, make sure you guys go out and train. Continue to invest in quality equipment by knowing what you need by going out and shooting. So I'm gonna hand it back to Eric for an encouraging word. Hey guys, so hopefully you got something out of that video, and I wanted to leave you guys with an encouraging word. I actually read this passage on a different episode, but currently I'm kind of going through some stuff right now. Wife's going in through surgery and stuff like that, and it's kind of nerve-wracking, but this passage keeps coming to my mind, and it keeps kind of being imprinted on my heart, and so I just want to share It's Psalm 18, and it's specifically these things, 32 through 36. It is God who arms me with strength and keeps my way secure. He makes my feet like the feet of a deer. He causes me to stand on the heights. He trains my hands for battle. My arms can bend a bow of bronze. You make your saving help my shield, and your right hand sustains me. Your help has made me great. You provide a broad path for my feet so that my ankles do not give way. And one of the things that I love about that passage is the fact that sometimes I feel like I'm going through some of the world's worst problems, some of the toughest challenges in life. And you know, my gut and immediate reaction is to try to solve it on my own. But what we hear from David in that psalm, as he's writing that psalm, he was actually fleeing and running away from King Saul. I kind of mentioned in the other video, but that passage, he immediately goes to prayer. He immediately reaches out to the Lord and says, He will save me. With God, I can do all things. And so if you're going through a challenge, if you're going through something that's a trial, don't try to just solve it on your own. Immediately go to prayer, go to God, give it to Him and say, Lord, I need your help with this. And also confide in your friends, in your family, in your community. And if you need to, send me an email, team@barrelhatchet.com, if you need to confide. I would love to pray for you. There's actually quite a few prayer requests that are in there that'll backlog, but I will get to them. I know it takes a little bit of time, but I will get to them. And so I just want to kind of leave you guys with that encouragement that God is a God who is a warrior. In the Bible, it calls Him the commander of the armies of heaven. We've always seen this kind of like picture of Jesus. It's like a passive and weak. He is loving, yes, and approachable. Jesus is a warrior to His core. He is called the commander of the armies of heaven, and He will move heaven and earth in order to get to you. When you are praying and you reach out to the Lord, God, I surrender this problem to you. I give it to you. He will come. He will come. And also, God knows for those who are believers that are, very well versed in the scriptures, that pray all the time, there also will be some times where God will allow you to go through those trials. But just like we do when we have a shot timer and it's immediate reaction, you kind of go off of that reflex, we should also have that reflex of going to prayer and giving things to the Lord instead of trying to solve it on our own, because it is going to be challenging in life sometimes. So guys, make sure that you're looking out for each other. Make sure that here in this community we stay strong, we go to each other, we go to the Lord when we need help, and He will be our refuge. He will make our hands ready for battle so we can bend a bow of bronze. So guys, train to be the eternal asset. My name is Eric. I love all you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.